Welcome to Politics and Tribal Action. Sitting in our temperature-controlled boxes, we feel so enlightened, so distant from our tribal ancestors. We have indeed come a long way, and for the most part we have shook off the terrors of those dark days. However, the vestiges of tribal warfare exist with us to this day. To see this, you only have to wait until November. The emotion comes out particularly strong every 4 years, when the leader of Tribe A goes up against the leader of Tribe B. Although I admit the battles are somewhat more civilized than those of the Neanderthal days, they have increased proportionately in senselessness. During this war, tribe members will yell how the whole world is going to turn into a smoldering heap if the other tribe wins, and if they win, there will be unicorns and rainbows. This inspires the tribe as they huddle around their fires or televisions, as often the case is. The tribe gets enraged, and though our methods of venting are less destructive than beating the opposite tribe members with a club, the rage is still vented. We write letters to the editor. Some of the more vindictive among us come up with creative names for the other tribe members. Fascists, teabaggers, communists, soulless monster, extremist, radicals, mitwits, Ethiopian, Rombies, anti-intellectual, Nazi sympathizer, Obama bin Laden, and a long list of others which are mostly inappropriate for this family video. But despite the tossing back of sound clips, threats of imminent destruction, and the constant suggestion of extremism on the other side, the reality is the whole contest is about as meaningful as a football game between Providence College and Old Dominion High. If we were to let in a sliver of rational thought, the whole mess would come tumbling down into a rubble of reality. First off, our choices for candidates have little to do with the principles, but rather with our tribal alignments. This is why when Romney took some moderate stances in debates with Obama, he was able to get cheers and praise from Republicans, while just a few months earlier in the primaries, he would have been put on a stick and roasted at the Iowa State Fair. You still think your choice of candidate is rational? Well, let's look at this. I'm going to list the accomplishments of 2 recent presidents. See if you can tell which is the Republican and which is the Democrat. President A. This president increased federal spending by 60%, increased Medicare spending by 131%, which included a massive spending increase to help seniors pay for prescription drugs, increased the number of federal economic regulation officers by 91,196, drastically increased federal involvement in education by signing a law supported by Ted Kennedy, created the largest marine reserve to date by making the Northern Hawaiian Islands a national monument, urged Congress to allow 12 million illegal aliens to work in the United States, and supported immigration reform that gave illegal immigrants a path to citizenship. Now President B. This president started the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy in the U.S. military. He signed DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act. He signed NAFTA, a huge free trade agreement, and negotiated the passage of the Balanced Budget Act. Who is the Democrat and who is the Republican? The free-spending, immigrant-friendly, ocean-preserving hippie must be the Democrat, right? Wrong. That is none other than favorite Democratic punching bag George W. Bush. And the DOMA-signing defender of traditional marriage, free trade, and balanced budgets? That is Bill Clinton. By any objective standards, Republicans should be endlessly praising the conservative leadership of President Clinton. But do you hear this? Of course not. Similarly, Democrats who love deficit spending and massive federal involvement in healthcare and education should be walking out praise for President Bush whenever any sort of microphone approaches their face. But you will never hear it. Why? Clearly it is because politics are not about what you do. It is all about the size of your smile, the grease in your hair, your connections, and of course, the tribe you are a part of. If people really followed their principles, most presidents would be mocked by their party and not praised as they always are. This is why Clinton is still praised as a feminist hero despite having used his authority to get sexual favors from his young female intern. This is why the anti-war movement died when Obama came to office, despite the fact that he continues to bomb innocents in Yemen and Pakistan and didn't bat an eye at bombing Libya. And why Reagan is still praised as a small government president despite having increased government spending. And there you have it. Politics is this crazy world where using women for sexual favors is feminism, spending is limited government, and bombing is peace. Because it isn't about right or wrong. It isn't about what is best for the people. It isn't about reality. It is about feeding our tribal desire to be on the winning team. And that's it. So let's do it, team. Let's win, regardless of what we do to get there.
Created using Powtoon.